Well, welcome, every one of you. This is the Successful Appraiser Mastermind. I'm very grateful that you've decided to join us. We have a lot of people logging on, so I'm just going to spend just a couple minutes here welcoming you and telling you a little bit about how this all got started. I again want to apologize. If you do not hear me, I'm hoping you'll read the chat box, because you do need to have your ability to be able to see and hear. Well, see is not so much as important as hearing. Really what you see is what you get. I am not a PowerPoint guy. I'll tell you that right up front. I've used PowerPoints in the past, and I have found that they don't have a lot of power, and frankly, I don't see the point, but I'm bummed. To be honest with you, I just like to teach. I like to be one-on-one across from you and just tell it the way it is, and so this is going to be the format for most of these. We may do a few PowerPoints in the future if the material warrants that. But for the most part, this is just going to be me talking to you. So hopefully you can see the video, and hopefully you can hear the audio, and we will be able to do what we need to do. Because this is being recorded, I am going to put the microphone close. I don't know whether or not it's picking up the mic or not. I don't think it is. But we'll do it anyway, just in case. So I've been absolutely overwhelmed by the response to this webinar series. I have to tell you a little secret. Maybe this is way too much inside baseball, but I'm a goal guy. I'm a goal setter. I set goals every week. I go through the goal program. And, in fact, the first of the year, I set goals for long term, and every week I set goals that will help me to be able to see or to get to that long-term process. And I set a goal for this webinar. I set the bar very, very high. And really what I was looking for is this has got to be worth my time. This has got to be of value to you. And so there was a certain number of individuals that I needed to have as registrants for this webinar series, really to make it worth my time and my effort. I had the feeling that I would probably be at about a fourth of that goal on the day that we started this. And I have been incredibly surprised to find that we are well over halfway there to the goal, and this is our first webinar. So thank you very much for each of you being willing to participate and being able to be a part of this. So I'm just going to take 2 seconds here and just let them know that they need to call in for the audio. Those that can't see me, I apologize for that. I'm not sure how to fix that. But the audio obviously is the important thing, so I'm just going to keep reminding everybody about that. Okay. I do want to tell you, by the way, that if you stay with me through the entire webinar, this will be an hour long. I'm a pretty big stickler on starting on time, and I'm a pretty big stickler on ending in time, except when I don't. So I do my best. Sometimes I run over just a little bit, but we'll end pretty close to being on time every time. And I know that your time is very valuable. I understand that. I'm a real estate appraiser. I get it. If you're here, you're not there. And so plan on an hour, and we'll get you out of here. There's not a lot I can do about the back and forth with the chat. I'm a single guy. I don't have a producer on this, and we'll do my best to be able to participate with you back and forth, but there won't be, unfortunately, a lot of chatting back and forth, because to do so causes me to hear and pay attention there. Okay, but I do want to let you know, if you stay with us through the entire webinar, I do have 2 bonuses to give you at the end of this webinar. And by the way, one of them is how to get 2 free months of this webinar. And that's in addition, by the way, to your 1 month that you're getting free already. And so you'll have a total of 3 months, which is a quarter of the year, paid for if you pay attention here clear through the end of the webinar. I want to begin today by talking a little bit about my story. And some of you know my story. Some of you have read a little bit on my webpage. And some of you I've talked to in person. A lot of you I've talked to over the phone. But I think the story that I have to tell really sets the stage to what we're going to do in the next year in this Successful Appraiser Mastermind. And so let me just briefly tell that story. About 20 years ago, I decided that I was going to be an appraiser. Now, this was going to be a very short thing for me. I had already been appraising previous to that. My dad was an appraiser, And I grew up knowing that appraisers make very little money, and they're stressed out all the time, and they're always at work, and I decided that I was not going to be that person. And so I decided that I was going to do what I love to do, and that, of course, is to teach. I love teaching. It is what I refer to as my mortal mission. And by the way, you'll hear that phrase a lot. It's a phrase that I coined, but it's a phrase that I use often to describe what you were born to do, what you are uniquely good at, and what you can bless the lives of others with. And so my mortal mission is teaching, and that's what I was going to do in life. But in order to get from here to there, I had to go through schooling. And I didn't want to work at the local factory, and so I decided I was going to be an appraiser just like my dad, even though I promised myself I would never do it. I figured that was better than working minimum wage on the assembly line. And so I did that. I started appraising about 20 years ago, got my license and started up my business, and it got me through school. And thankfully, I got through school without student debt, and I know that that's a huge thing. And so I was very thankful for that. I was very grateful that I was able to get through that process. And I enjoyed appraising. I found that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, but I also found that I was right in the sense that I didn't make a lot of money. I was very busy all the time. My wife never saw me, even though I worked from home. I was in the office, if you know what I mean. And so it was very difficult. And I went through many, many years of that. In fact, I got a teaching job. I was able to teach full-time, and I loved teaching. I was teaching young people, 9th graders, 10th graders, and I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't like the disciplining, but I liked teaching. And so I knew that that was going to be my lot in life, but I needed a little supplemental income along the way. And so I figured, well, I could do teaching in the day, and then during the evening and the night, I could do my appraisal. And I did that for several years. And it worked out okay, except that I never saw my family, never had any hobbies, worked all weekend, and that was not exactly the lifestyle that I wanted to lead. And so I decided that I was going to quit appraising and I was going to do full-time teaching, and we would simply just live under a difficult financial situation because, as each of you know, teachers don't get paid a lot. And so I figured that that would be my lot in life. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, and she still is, and that was a goal that we wanted throughout our lives, that she wouldn't need to work. And so we just decided that we would, just suck it up, and I would teach and make, $30,000, $40,000, maybe $50,000 a year, and we would just make do. As we started down that path, it became very apparent very quickly that that was not the right path for me. It didn't feel right, and it just was not working out the way that I wanted it to. It didn't feel like the direction that we should be going. And so my wife and I considered possibly going into appraising full-time. We decided that that's the direction we needed to go, and so we went that direction. The next 6 or 7 years were spent doing basically what every other appraiser does. And as a consequence, as the old saying goes, if you do what everybody else does, fill in the blank, you get what everybody else gets. And to be honest with you, I was happy, I enjoyed my job, but I knew that there was more. I knew there was more out there that I could do, and I was excited to be a part of that. And so I went to the next phase of my life where I got rid of television, got rid of a lot of the things that I liked to do that were kind of inane, that didn't really produce much, if you will, and I decided to read. I decided to read more. I decided to look for documentaries on the internet. I decided that I was going to study successful people. I started with the Founding Fathers because I saw the Founding Fathers as being individuals who, how could they leave their businesses for 3 months, go to Philadelphia and write the Constitution, and then go back to their jobs and still have a job waiting for them? That was intriguing to me. And as I started studying these Founding Fathers, I found that many of them, merchants, farmers, ranchers, surveyors, lawyers, but they all had one thing in common. I shouldn't say all. The majority of them had something in common. That was that they were successful people in their own right. They were successful businessmen. And they were so successful that they could leave what they did for months, come back to it, and still be making money. That was cool to me. And I wanted to find out how they did it. And so I started learning more about them. I read their biographies. I read their papers. I learned more about these individuals, and I found that what I learned in history class was not true at all. That these were actually good men not perfect men, but good men who were trying to do good things. And they all lived under a set of principles. And those principles worked. And that was cool. I learned what those principles were, and then I started looking at other more contemporary people, people like Napoleon Hill, people like Robert Kiyosaki, people like Steve Jobs, Henry Ford, Einstein. I started learning about successful people, and I realized that the principles that the Founding Fathers were living were the same principles that almost every successful person out there were living. Now, obviously, these people weren't appraisers, but I could take what was being learned, and I could apply it now to what I was doing. Because principles are not specific to any industry. Principles are eternal truths that have always existed, exist now, and will eternally exist. And that was cool to me as well. That was an epiphany that I thought was really awesome. Learned a little bit about principles and how you utilize them in your life. And so I started to utilize them in my life. I started to take what I knew and what I had learned about the Founding Fathers, and I decided to apply them to appraising. And I found some success. One of the things that I found was that you could be a successful appraiser, meaning you could run a very successful appraisal office. And it was done by using the same principles that everybody else was using. Now, one of the principles that everyone else was using was the principle of the mastermind. Now, if you're not familiar with the term mastermind, other than obviously the title of what we're doing here, you need to learn a little bit about the mastermind. Napoleon Hill was the father of the mastermind. Now, he wasn't the one that invented it. He's the one that really brought it forth and showed people what the mastermind is. By the way, Napoleon Hill is the one who wrote Think and Grow Rich. He also wrote Master Key to Success and several other books, and he's one of my favorite dead mentors. I don't mean he's favorite because he's dead, but he happens to be dead, and he's one of my favorite mentors. I love Napoleon Hill. I've read everything that he's written, and probably several times. And one of the things that he taught was the power of the mastermind. And basically the mastermind is this. It's when a handful of people who are like-minded get together for a common purpose. And as they do so, a third or extra mind, if you will appear in the room. Now, obviously, it's not a hokey vision type thing. It's simply when you talk with someone else that is of the similar mindset as you come up with ideas that you never would have come up with otherwise. And so I decided that I was going to be involved in masterminds. And so I started developing and joining masterminds. I have been involved in masterminds for over 8 years now. And I love the mastermind. I love that concept. I found that all successful people, all, not most, all successful people have used the mastermind. People like Napoleon Hill, Robert Kiyosaki, and Wallace Wattles, Richard Branson, Dan Kennedy, Stephen Covey, Jack Canfield, Steve Jobs, Dale Carnegie, Henry Ford, you name it. That's just to name a few. When you study great people, you will find that they surround themselves with people that can be their advisors. Let's look at the presidency of the United States, for example. Do you really think that the president makes all the decisions that he makes on his own? Not a chance. You ever heard of a cabinet? That's what the cabinet does. They're advisors. Talk to any big president or CEO of a big company. What do they have surrounding them? A board of directors, an advisory board, some group of people who will give ideas to these individuals. One of my favorite individuals is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was famous for making important decisions, but he only did so after he got all the advice that he could from other people. And so I have now been involved in masterminds, as I said, for over 8 years. I specifically meet with mastermind groups quite often. In fact, the current one that I'm involved in is a local mastermind, and I meet with these other individuals. They're business owners locally. One is a big insurance company owner. The other is an accountant. We've got a financial advisor in there. He's not involved right now, but I have had in the past an owner of a car dealership here locally. Very successful individual. Currently, we have a pizza store chain owner. He owns 16 pizza chains. and he meets together. So there's a group of, what, 4 of us that meet together on a frequent basis every other week. And what is the purpose there? We talk about appraisal work. We talk about pizza. We talk about insurance. But more than that, we talk about principles or methodologies into how to be good business owners, how to be successful business owners. And that has, without fail, been the principle that has helped me most in what I do as a real estate appraiser. My success as a real estate appraiser has happened because of the mastermind. So when I say I was doing what everybody else was doing, I decided that by meeting with these other individuals and learning these principles, I would start not just doing things a little bit different, but doing things the exact opposite of what my peers were doing. As a consequence, I went from this level to this level very, very quickly. I found that I was doing 1 to 1.5 appraisals per day on average before, and then I could jump to 4 or 5 appraisals per day. And here's the key, not lower my quality of work. In fact, it improved as I went to that. By the way, I also went from working 60-plus hours a week in appraisals to working less than 40 hours a week in appraisals. So there's some concepts and principles there as well, which we will get into. And so I decided that this was great and this was fun. I enjoyed being successful as an appraiser, but I wasn't doing what I love to do. Remember, my mortal mission is to teach, not to appraise. Now, don't get me wrong. I love appraising. I really do. To go out and to meet people and to be in their home, what other job can you look in someone's closet, right? I mean, that's fun. It's interesting to go into these homes and just see how people live and to associate with them. And I actually enjoy the type-ups as well. Not as much as I used to, but there's times when I enjoy type-ups. And I enjoy appraising, but it, again, was not what I was born and loved to do. And so I decided about 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, it was 2009, I decided that I needed to get back into teaching. And I needed to do so not at a $30,000 a year salary again in teaching public school, but I needed to do something with my teaching. And so I decided the best way to do that and to still appraise would be to merge the two and to go out and mentor and teach other appraisers how to do what I do. Now, obviously, I don't want to teach my direct competition here locally, though I probably would if they asked me. My goal was to teach people across the country, and I've had an opportunity and a great blessing to be able to do that. I've spoken at every major conference of the appraisal world, and I've been in all national magazines on the being able to write articles for the appraisal world, and been able to write a weekly blog, but more importantly, have been able to teach people one-on-one how to be better appraisers, and that has been very, very rewarding for me. Unfortunately, to teach someone one-on-one requires that I have to put my appraisal office on hold, hop a plane, fly 1,000 miles, get a hotel and a rental car and eat out and do the whole travel thing. Now, traveling's fun. I enjoy traveling. I love seeing the world, but airports get a little old after a while. And I decided that 2 things were going on. Number one, I needed to see my family more. I needed to be home more often. But not only that, I found that, unfortunately, the cost for me to be able to go to someone else's office was prohibitive for most appraisers. It was very expensive, and that was unfortunate. I wasn't getting rich off of it. Remember, if I'm doing 4 or 5 appraisals a day, and I've got to put that on hold for 4 or 5 days so that I can go fly somewhere, it's not the travel that's expensive. It's the putting my appraisal office on hold that's expensive. And that's why the costs of doing so had to be so high. And I found that most appraisers don't have that kind of money to dish out, to have me fly out, to be one-on-one with them. Now, I will pause and say this, and I don't want to turn this into an infomercial, but I will say this. Those that did hire me found that very quickly that was returned to them and then some because of the things that I was teaching them to do that was so much different than what they were doing. But it was still cost prohibitive, and you've got to have the money up front for me to come up. And so I found that I wasn't doing a whole lot of teaching. I was doing some teaching, but it wasn't a whole lot. And I needed to do more, but more importantly, I needed to get this message to more appraisers. And so that's where the concept of merging what I was already doing in my own life, i.e. participating in masterminds myself, I needed to then apply that to other appraisers in the way that I was teaching. And thus the Successful Appraiser Mastermind was born. And so now we can have a mastermind over the internet, thank goodness for technology. Thank goodness for this great invent called the internet. And we're able to meet without me leaving my office. I'm sitting today in my corporate office, and I didn't have to leave anywhere to get to you and to share with you the same principles that I have learned and have been teaching to other appraisers for years. Let me talk a little bit about how this Successful Appraiser Mastermind is going to work. Obviously, based on my explanation of what a mastermind is, it would be very difficult, in fact, it would be impossible to have 100+ people all talking at the same time and us having a conversation. It just doesn't work. But I wanted to do something more than just a webinar. You know, webinars when I sit down and I talk to a video camera, which is what I'm doing now, and a phone. I didn't really want to do this. I wanted to do something more because I knew the power of the mastermind. There is something incredible and magical that happens when business owners get together and they spend an hour discussing their problems and coming up with solutions. Every time I go to a mastermind, it is always a sacrifice. I always have 1,000 things on my desk, and I always think, oh, gee, I've got mastermind today. I've got to quit everything. I've got to jump in the car. I've got to drive across town, and I've got to meet with these other guys, and I just don't have time to do it. But every single time I've done it, every time, not most of the time, every time I've done it, I've come away very grateful that I participated. And so I am an absolute believer, okay? I'm an evangelist for the mastermind. I know it works, and why not do that as an appraisal business as well? The only way to do that is to have a handful of people talking about their business. Now, here's the funny thing. In each mastermind I attend, I'm not the sole individual that's participating. In fact, I have a very small part most of the time. Most of the time, what I'm doing is participating or listening in on other conversations. And yet I always come back learning something about my business. Now keep in mind, I'm not meeting with other appraisers. When I do a mastermind, I'm meeting with the insurance guy and the car guy and the pizza guy. But every single time I meet with them, I come away thinking, oh, gee, I've got to change that in my business. Oh, that's a great idea. I ought to apply that to my business. And so it's cool to be able to see how principles work in one sense and be able to start applying them to my own business. Now, this is a little bit different because we are appraisers and we're going to be talking together. But in order to have a true mastermind feel, in order to have the mastermind set up, we have to do a little bit different. It can't be just a webinar. And so what I've developed here is actually we're going to be meeting twice a month. The first webinar, if you will, if you want to call that, the first meeting, online meeting, will be the webinar, or will be, excuse me, the first online meeting we have will be the mastermind. The second will be more of a webinar style. Okay, let me explain. I have hand-chosen a handful of other appraisers from across the nation. I think we have 5 on our panel. It's important that we don't get too many, and it's important that we don't have too little. I've found that with a mastermind, you have to have just the right amount, and it's about 4 or 5 people. If you have much more than 6, there's just not a lot of time for people to talk. If you have much less than that, there's not enough good ideas coming forth. And so what we have done is we've set up a situation where we will meet together on a panel. The panel is chosen for this coming period. Now, the other thing I've learned about masterminds is they get worn out very quickly. And probably 6 to 9 months, we'll be looking for a new panel. So if any of you, as you go through this process, are interested in being on the panel, let me know. The panel is chosen for the next 6 to 9 months, but at that point, we're going to be switching it up and we'll have a new panel. But the purpose is we're going to be in a virtual conference room, if you will. You'll be able to see my video on the screen, and you'll be able to see all the other videos on the screen as well of these other appraisers, this handful of panel members. So you'll kind of be, if you will, a fly on the wall in that meeting to watch us discuss appraisal business, to watch us discuss their businesses. Maybe somebody wants to improve the way they do mobile technology. Okay, great. That'll be the topic for the day, and we'll talk about that. But we're going to be talking to that specific appraiser. What does that mean for you? You can absolutely apply that to what you do as well. And that's the cool thing, is we're going to have this back and forth, but you'll be able to be in on that meeting and being able to see how we're helping appraiser A do whatever he does, but that will also help you to do what you do because it directly affects what you're doing on a regular basis. Now, these panel members have been screened. They've been vetted. I am not an individual who's just going to accept anybody. Okay, specifically, if I can just get on a soapbox for a little bit, many of you have probably recognized and noticed that ever since HVCC came along and then Dodd-Frank and everything else that we're having to deal with, there's a lot of negative Nellies out there. A lot of appraisers are very, very upset that their cheese was moved. I understand that. I get that. But there's a time to be upset, and then there's a time to move forward and to say, you know what, okay, great. We can work to change that, but for now, this is our reality. It is. If you want to do financial work, if you want to do appraisals for financial work, for refis and purchases, you're going to have to work for AMCs. There's really no two ways about it. Now, there's exceptions to that, and we'll talk about that as we go through this series. But for the most part, that's your lot in life if you want to do those types of appraisals. You've got to man up to it, woman up to it, cowboy up, if you will. And I'm from Idaho, so we'll use that term. You've got to cowboy up and do it. And most appraisers get that. They either get it or they're out of business. And so that's the type of individuals that I was looking for. People who are at this level with their business, but who want to be at this level with their business. They want to grow. They want to rise to that occasion. They want to grow their business. And so these are individuals who I fully expect their business model will change dramatically over the next year as we meet together and discuss the individual issues that they are dealing with. I expect that your business model will change as well because I need to bring you value. I am not unaware of the fact that you are spending money and time to be here. And as you and I both understand, time is money, especially when you're an appraiser. When you are here, you're not out there. And so your time here better be valuable. You better learn enough here that you can then apply to your business that it is worth your time to be here. The money that you spend in this webinar is minor compared to the money that you're going to spend in the time that you spend here. And so I want to make this valuable to you. Thus, the money back guarantee, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay? So the first meeting, every month we're going to meet with that mastermind group, that panel, if you will. Let me tell you a little bit about how that meeting will transpire. It will basically roll out like this. You and I will meet for 1 hour. The first few minutes we'll do a welcoming. The second few minutes we're going to do what's called a 1-minute epiphany. Okay, the 1-minute epiphany is probably something I've done for the last 3 or 4 years in all of the masterminds that I've been involved in. We do it in the current one that I'm involved in. I love the 1-minute epiphany. It's my favorite part. It's basically where everybody that's on a panel has an opportunity to spend 60 seconds or less sharing with the rest of us something that they've learned between the time we're meeting now and the time that we last met. So if it's 2 weeks, in the last 2 weeks, I've learned this. Now, in this case, it's going to be in the last month because the panel will only meet once a month. They can share a good book that they've just read. They can share a success principle that they've just learned. They can share a business practice that they've just started that's working well. There's a number of different things. The sky's the limit. The only criteria is that it has to be less than a minute, and it has to be something that's valuable for everybody else. And I love that time because every single time, if nothing else, I come away with a new book that I need to read or a new idea that I need to start implementing or you name it. And I love that opportunity. And so we will do that. The next thing we'll do is what's called the chalkboard. The chalkboard is basically teaching time. This is 20 minutes when I will spend with you teaching something I do in my business, teaching some type of a success principle that I've learned and started implementing in my life. Maybe we'll talk about goal setting. Maybe we'll talk about time management skills. But 20 minutes we will spend during that first meeting, doing the chalkboard, where I teach you. Now, there's not going to be a literal chalkboard again. I'm not a guy that can talk and write and be on a video and do everything and think at the same time. I can't chew gum and walk at the same time. I tried, but it didn't work. So my goal here is to teach you in the same manner and fashion that I'm teaching you now, okay, video, so that you have an opportunity to learn some of the things that I do. The bulk of that meeting is going to be spent in the next 30 minutes, which is going to be called the couch. Okay, now that's a little play on words. When you go into the psychiatrist, you lay down on the couch and you tell them all your problems, right? This is the opportunity for one panel member, only one, we only have time for one in each meeting, but one panel member will be able to figuratively lie down on our couch and spill their guts. Maybe they'll bring to us a problem that they're currently having. Maybe they'll talk about the fact that, hey, you know, I've been working for AMCs and I'm just done. I just want to do non-lender work, so let's talk about that. Or maybe that will be, hey, you know, this mobile technology, I've watched your webinars, Appraiser Coach, and it looks all cool and stuff, and you make it look easy, but it ain't that easy, so I need some help on how to do this. Okay, great. We'll spend the next 30 minutes talking about your problems and helping you to go from this level to this level. Now, obviously, everybody else that's involved in the couch is not literally laying on the couch, but they're still learning the things that need to be learned from the couch. And so we'll be able to do that and share with them things that will help their appraisal office, but will in turn be able to help yours. The last few minutes, I'm a big goal guy. The last few minutes, we're going to set goals with the panel members, and we're going to follow up on goals that were previously set. Okay? Now, how does that affect those of you who are quote-unquote flies on the wall? Hopefully you're listening to those goals and setting some similar goals for yourself and finding accountability partners to help you follow up on those goals. So that's the mastermind. That's going to be the first meeting of each month. The second meeting of each month is going to be quite different. Still similar setup where the video's there and there's going to be teaching that's occurring, but we're not going to have the panel during the second meeting of each month. That instead is going to be more of a webinar style meeting. And we're going to spend 60 minutes doing something, and it's going to be different each time. Maybe I'll spend the whole 60 minutes teaching. Okay, we'll do the chalkboard for 60 minutes. Maybe we will have experts come in and actually teach us something about the appraisal world that we may not have known before. I attend a lot of appraiser conferences, and at every appraiser conference there are booths all over the conference hall. And I have opportunity to go and meet these people that have awesome products for appraisers that most appraisers don't know about because they don't attend the conferences. And so I've developed a network of individuals who have some awesome inventions to show you, some services to provide that we are going to bring in and allow them to teach you about that. We also might do question and answer time where we do the chat, or maybe we have you come in on your microphone or what have you, and you can actually talk and say, hey, you know, this is George in Texas, and I've got a question about whatever. We may do a mixture. We may do an expert for 20 minutes. We might do question and answer time for 20 minutes. And we might do a chalkboard for 20 minutes. But that second meeting is going to be quite different than the first, meaning the first meeting obviously is going to be more of the mastermind concept. The other meetings are going to be more of an opportunity to learn and to teach and to do more back and forth and me be able to have some interaction with you. One of the things I found when I was teaching, and one thing that's a real bummer about the whole webinar thing, I've done a lot of webinars over the last year. I've had opportunity to pair up with many different companies, both software companies and magazines and different things that have asked me to come in and do webinars for them. And I enjoy webinars. They're very fun. But there is an energy when you have an audience. My favorite thing to do is to teach at conferences because there's 300 appraisers out there and we are able to do back and forth and I'm able to get them out of the audience and do certain things in front of everybody else, and that to me is very fun. The webinar situation doesn't bode well for that kind of interaction. On the other hand, this second meeting of each month will be more of an opportunity to be able to share that, to be able to do more back and forth, where you can ask me questions and then we can actually have a conversation back and forth. And so that will be a lot of fun. Let me talk a little bit about what you can expect to learn this next year. That's been probably the biggest question that I've had over the last few weeks as people have been joining. What is it that I'm going to learn? It's a hard question to answer because this can take us a number of different ways, and I'm not dead set on a certain agenda. You'll find I'm not an agenda guy. I'm not one that likes to read from a script. I might have a few bullet points and some notes, and you'll see me look over to the side of the screen a little bit to make sure I'm on task, but most of this is off the cuff, and that's the way I like to teach. So that's the way this is going to roll out over the next year as well. This may look very different in 9 months from now than it does now. I mean, a great example is when I logged in this morning, even though I tried and tried and tried to make sure that you could hear me using your speakers, here we are on the phone together. And unfortunately, that's just the way that it has to be. But we might tweak things over the next little while. But the question is, what are you going to learn? What are you going to take away? Why is this worth your time and money to be a part of? And simply it's this. There are principles and methodologies that I have learned as a real estate appraiser over the years that have allowed me to be very, very successful. How successful? Take a look at my website. I'm crazy enough to put my tax returns on my homepage. And so you can look at exactly how much money I make. And that's appraisal income only, by the way. Some people say, well, how much are you making as a teacher? And how much are you making as any other business that I might be running? What you see on that website is my appraisal firm and my appraisal firm only. I want to share with you that success. I want to help you to be able to be successful as well. And so I'm going to be teaching you principles, and I'm going to be able to teach you methodologies. Now, I use those terms on purpose. You'll notice that when I talk about principles and methodologies, it's not like a lot of people do and they say the same word and they just use a synonym, okay? Those are two very distinct and different things. There are principles and there are methodologies, okay? A principle simply is this. It is an eternal truth that has always existed, exists now, and will always exist. It's eternal. It's unchanging, okay? There are things out there, and this is what I talked about earlier. When I started studying successful people, I found that they understood principles, and they started living those principles. These are truths. These are things that just are, okay? Whether you choose to believe them or not, they just work, okay? Gravity works. It's a law. It doesn't matter whether you believe in gravity. Gravity works, and so there is a principle involved there. So we're going to be teaching some principles, some general principles of success, okay? And I'm going to tell you how I apply those principles in my own life, and of course how they apply to the appraisal world as well. Methodologies are different. Methodologies can change, and methodologies do change. Methodologies have a lot to do with technology. The way that I appraised 20 years ago with a clipboard and a 100-foot tape is much different, as many of you know, than I appraise today with an iPad and a Alicia Disto laser measure. I do things much different now than I did in the past. Those are methodologies, and we're going to get into those. That's probably what people are most interested in, I think, when I speak to them, is they want to know how I do what I do and to get into detail about what I do that's so much different than my peers. Remember, I'm doing 4 times the volume of any of my peer appraisers, and I didn't cut my quality to do so. I'm going to repeat, I actually improved the quality of my work as I moved in that direction, and you can as well. I will teach you the methodologies that we do to get there. We're going to be teaching you some tips and tricks. These are just small things that I wouldn't necessarily put in the realm of methodologies, but I would say that they're tips and tricks, just things that I do that help to be more successful. I am going to be going into some detail on mobile appraising. That's one of the most interesting topics for most people. I've done many webinars over the last year, as I talked about. My most popular webinars have been the individual webinars where I've talked about mobile appraising. By mobile appraising, I mean using a tablet, using a laser measure in the field, and how to do that. People are very, very excited about that new technology because it saves them time. And when you save time, you make more money as an appraiser. It's weird how that works, but it does. And so we're going to be talking about some philosophies of success, both as a business owner and in your personal life. There are things that I do on a regular basis that have nothing to do directly with appraising, but have everything to do with appraising, just because of the way that I try to live my life. Now, I won't for a second tell you that I'm perfect in this. When I say I set goals, I set 6 goals a week, and I probably achieve 4 of them a week, okay? So, but here's the cool thing. 4 goals achieved in a week is 4 more than I had done the previous week. And so that's the key, is that we're trying to live these principles as best we can, but remembering that we're not perfect and we're not going to be perfect in living them, okay? I'm going to teach a lot about the law of delegation. I'm not going to get into detail about that today other than to say that if you are doing things that you can pay people less to do as effectively, if not more effectively, then you need to do that. That's called the law of delegation, because that allows you to then do more appraisals, to do more of what you love to do, what you need to do as an appraiser, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about daily punch lists. Okay, I'll get more in detail more as the year progresses, but what a punch list is and how you do that. I'm going to talk about how to do inspections efficiently. I talked to an appraiser, not to point him out because I know he's in the audience. I talked to an appraiser the other day that said he spends an hour or more at every appraisal inspection he does. And I was very blunt with him, and I said, it's too long. You're spending too much time in the property. And his comment was something to the effect of, well, how do you get all the information and not spend an hour there? Well, there are ways to do it and to not cut on the quality of your work. And we'll teach you that. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about efficient report writing and how to be efficient in writing your reports. There's certain things that you as an appraiser must do. You just have to do. And there's other things that you don't have to do. In fact, there's a lot of things that you don't have to do. And we're talking about what those things are and what they aren't and how to apply them in your business, okay? We'll talk about quality control tools. I'm big on quality control. Never a report leaves my office that it does not have at least 2 sets of eyes looking at that report. And usually it's more than that. In other words, I make sure that every one of my reports is checked over in detail so that every T is crossed, every I is dotted, and that thing is ironclad before it goes out to the AMC, so that when I get a correction from an AMC, it's not, hey, you forgot to fill in the blank. It's, hey, we need additional information. I get corrections, but most of those corrections have to do with revisions that they want, not necessarily that I should have done in the first place. And we'll talk about how to do that. I am big on what I call the laws of wealth, okay? I believe that there are certain laws of wealth that the wealthy live. And I'm going to teach some of those. We're going to talk about appraisal tools and technology. We're going to talk about marketing for non-lender work, okay? I don't know a lot about that. I do a little bit of that, but not a lot, so I'm going to get some experts to come in and teach us how to do that. And I'm going to learn right alongside you. We're going to talk about insourcing versus outsourcing versus offshoring. Those are all different terms, and some of them I've made up. Well, the insourcing, in the way that I apply it, is a term that I coined. Insourcing versus outsourcing versus offshoring, and how to do that, the pros and cons of each, okay? I'm going to talk about your list for more work. Now, what I mean by list, I mean your contacts and how to keep track of contacts and be much more effective at the marketing that you're doing. We're going to talk about your daily and weekly workflow, your planning, how to do a week. I'll give you a brief introduction to that. I do no appraisals on Monday, and I do no work on Fridays. So all of the work that I do, the money that I make as a real estate appraiser is done on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Monday is my planning day. Monday is my webinar day. Monday is my whatever day. I'm working that day, but I'm not doing appraisals that day for the most part. There's exceptions, and we'll talk about those as well. Fridays, I take off. I'm with my family. My wife homeschools. I'm a homeschool dad on Friday morning, and I take off and do something fun with my kids Friday afternoon. I'll teach you how to set up your week so that you can be as efficient in 3 days as you were in the past in 5 days. How would that be? And much, much more. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things. We're going to be talking about how to handle more volume without cutting corners, without cutting your quality. Let me tell you what we're not going to do. If you are here because you want to become a better appraiser, you're in the wrong place. This is not what we're going to be teaching here. Why? It's not that I don't believe in becoming a better appraiser. I get more continuing ed, I guarantee, than any of you do, because I attend conferences, but I don't just attend the conferences just to associate with other people, though that's an important part of what I do. I attend conferences to get the CE credits. I love learning about appraisals and how to be a better appraiser, but that opportunity is plentiful anywhere else. That's not what this particular mastermind is for. You can learn how to be a better appraiser. You can learn USPAP any number of different ways. And I encourage you to do so. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's not what we're doing here. If you come here to learn how to make better adjustments, how to justify your reconciliation, how to do a better cost approach, how to do a better income approach, how to do the the cap rate, we're not going to do that here. What we are all about here is how to be a better business owner, specifically how to be a better appraisal business owner. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. Again, 2 meetings a month. The first one will be the mastermind with the panel. I wanted to introduce you to our panel today, but I knew that I wouldn't have time. So our panel is in the audience. I've seen them log in. Hi, panel. We'll meet you next time we meet, but we're not going to do that here. So prices. Let me talk a little bit about prices. I am a firm believer that value received and value given must equal. And by equal, I mean that if I were to give you a candy bar and charge you $1 for that candy bar, you need to feel like you got a good deal. And I need to feel like I got a good deal as well. In other words, I ask someone, what's this candy bar worth if you pay $1 for it? And the answer is the candy bar is actually worth more than $1. It's not worth $1. Otherwise, why would you exchange $1 for the exact equal value? It's got to be worth more than $1 for you to exchange that $1 in return. And vice versa, I've got to be able to feel like that $1 is worth more than the candy bar that I'm giving to you, okay? And so that exchange has got to be a higher level exchange. Both of us need to walk away feeling like we got value from that. And so that's what I'm hoping to happen in this webinar series. So I've made it very, very easy for you to make sure that the value is given, okay? Specifically, there's no hidden charges. What you see is what you get. It's on the website. Look on the website. You'll know what the charges are. It's cheaper to do it on a annual basis than it is on a month-to-month basis, okay? And you'll see the details of that when you get into it. The first month is always free. I don't expect you to come and buy the car without kicking the tires. And so I hope that you will have an opportunity to experience what we're going to do, to feel confident that, okay, yeah, that's actually very valuable to me, and it's worth what I'm putting into it, both time and money. And one more thing, I'm a firm believer in the full money-back guarantee, no questions asked. Okay, I used to shop at Kmart, and I stopped shopping at Kmart. Why? Because every time I had to exchange something at Kmart, not to diss on Kmart, but there's a reason that they're not Walmart. And a lot of people, bless their soul, they enjoy shopping at Kmart. But unless things have changed, it used to be very, very difficult to get an exchange at Kmart. If I was unsatisfied, I would have to stand in line. They would ask me where my receipt was. If I didn't have one, they couldn't exchange it. It was very frustrating. And so I started shopping at Walmart. Now, I don't like Walmart either. I don't like the bigness of it. I don't like the fact that, oh, gee, I forgot to get socks and they're clear on the other side of the world to get them. You know what I mean if you've been to Walmart. But I do like the fact that if you go to Walmart and exchange something, no questions asked. If you're not happy with it, if it doesn't work, if it's not what you thought it was, if you just changed your mind for whatever reason, there's no questions asked. They give you your money back. That's the guarantee that I give you here as well. If you get into this 6 months and this just isn't what you thought it would be, no questions asked. I'll give you your money back. And so there's really nothing to lose by being a part of the webinar series and of the mastermind itself. Okay. Questions coming across is what are the dates of the webinars? I don't have them in front of me, but they are on the website. Okay, so if you go to the website, there is a calendar there and it shows you the dates of the webinars. I will try for the most part to keep them consistent. Okay, so we will meet on a certain day at a certain time every month. I may have to change that. I already know I'm going to have to do that in June. I'm speaking at a conference in June that's right on the top of when the webinar is going to be. And so we will have to tweak it just a bit. But for the most part, I want it to be consistent for you so that you know right when and where that we will be meeting all the time. Okay? The other key is if you can't meet a webinar, it might be better for you to pay on an annual basis rather than a monthly basis. The monthly basis gives you access to this webinar live. It does give you access to the archives, and an annual payment will give you access. It's cheaper on an annual basis, and it gives you access, of course, to the archives as well if you do happen to miss the webinar. Okay? Our time is short, so I want to close up here by just saying this. We are very, very hermit-like as appraisers. I don't know if you've noticed that, but we love our caves. Some of us have a really hard time getting out. I know this comes as a surprise to most people, but I am an introvert at heart. I truly am. I can put on the mask, and I can get out in front of people and do the whole song and dance like I'm doing today. But that's not me in the sense that if I were to go to a social event versus sitting at home by the fire reading a book, I'll choose the fire book any day. Okay, that's me. I don't like being in the limelight. I know that's a little bit different than what I explained earlier, that I love to teach. I do love to teach, but I don't like the limelight. Figure that one out. But we as appraisers, I know me specifically, I would much rather go to a vacant property than somebody that's there. I just would. I just would rather deal with myself than deal with other people. Okay? Unfortunately, most appraisers are the same way, and we don't like to get out of our shell. This, I hope, is an opportunity for each of us to get out of our shell just a little bit. One of the things that appraisers have a very, very difficult time doing is sharing information with other appraisers. Why? Because most of the appraisers that they know are local appraisers, and even then, they probably don't know them very well. I remember when I first moved to the town that I live in now, I decided I was going to be a friendly appraiser and get to know my appraiser buddies, my peers. And so I sent out invitations to every appraiser in the area. There was 45 or so. And I reserved a restaurant, and we were going to have a breakfast. And I was just going to introduce myself and get to know them, and it was just going to be a networking opportunity. We had 3 appraisers show up. One was me, one was my dad, and 1 other appraiser showed up. And I was very disappointed. And I realized that appraisers don't like to get out of their shell. They just don't. And they don't like to share with other appraisers for the most part. There are exceptions to the rule. And I will highly encourage that you get to know other appraisers in your area. But there's a difference between sharing with your friends and sharing with your peers as far as business goes. And I understand that. I get that. Sometimes we want to keep that stuff tight to our chest, the things that we know and know will keep us successful. So this is an opportunity to meet with people across the country. And so there's no pressure. And hopefully we're going to move you to a higher level. And your success is going to blossom over the next year. I did promise you a couple bonuses. Thank you for staying around. We got just a few minutes left, so let me share with you those 2 bonuses. Bonus number 1 is I want you to write down this website. In fact, I'm going to type it in as I give it. www.freeappraiserreport.com. www.freeappraiserreport.com. I have written a book, an e-book, called the 10 Biggest Mistakes Most Appraisers Make in Running Their Businesses and How You Can Avoid Them. Excellent starter, primer, if you will, to what we're going to do this next year. Because those 10 mistakes are what most appraisers are making. And it's the 10 mistakes that we're going to overcome over the next year, in addition to many, many others as well. But go to that website. It's bonus number 1, freeappraiserreport.com. You do have to put your name and contact information in, and yes, it does go into a database, and yes, I will send you my blog, okay? If that bothers you, sign up for it, get the free ebook, and cancel the blog the first time you get it. It's very, very easy, okay? Bonus number 2, for anyone who refers a friend, okay, a peer, someone other appraiser that you know, and they become a member of the mastermind, I'm going to give you 2 free months. Okay, so you already get the first free month. That will add an additional 2 months free if you refer somebody who is going to sign up for the mastermind. Now, if you're an annual member, how does that work? I'm going to give you $80 off of the annual membership, which is already cheaper than the month-to-month. Okay, so a full $80. So if you sign someone up and they become a member of the mastermind, this is bonus number 2, let me know, send me an email, and I will knock 2 free months off of your subscription, your membership. And so you can get a total of a quarter of the year completely free just by letting someone else know. By the way, that's a stackable offer. If you refer 2, 3, 4, you get to the point that the webinar series is completely free to you. Okay, and so that works well for you as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close. And thank you again for being here, and encourage you to be an active participant, an active part of the webinar over the next year or however long you stay. I hope it's going to be a long-term thing for all of us. I'm very, very, very humbled that you have made the time and spent the money to be here. I cannot tell you how overwhelmed I am with the sense of responsibility when I see how many people have actually signed up for this. It makes me realize that the things that I teach are important, but it makes me realize that there really are appraisers out there that want to be better, that want to do more. And I'm absolutely a believer that you can. I'm absolutely a believer that this is not something that is foreign, and it's not a silver bullet. If you've come here looking for a silver bullet, if you've come here thinking that, oh, gee, there's going to be something new that I've never heard of before, there's going to be some things like that, but for the most part, this is simply getting on a level with other successful individuals who will also help you to be successful as well. I'm absolutely confident that 2013, this next year, is going to be a huge year for all of us. Again, thank you for joining us. We will see you at the next Mastermind, and go out and create some value.